Sorry,
Okay.
Gene Cummings, little time tonight. Thank you, Howard Feinman. Join us again tomorrow night at 5 and 7 Eastern for more Hardball. Countdown with Keith Olbermann starts right now.
Which of these stories will you be talking about tomorrow? Fortunately, the right wing is not going to remain calm when the situation calls for panic. Gingrich, white man racist, would be forced to withdraw. Latina woman racist should also be forced to withdraw. Rove, I know lots of stupid people who went to Ivy League schools. I bet you do. And it's too difficult to pronounce her name. And her favorite meal might influence her judicial decisions.
She's a bigot. She's a racist.
It's rage against progress and diversity unfettered. The right wing goes nuts. The centerpiece, a quote pulled out of context about how a Hispanic woman's life experience might make her judgment better than a white man's, or how it might not. Prop 8, bigger than politics. A federal suit now to overturn the California vote, a suit filed by David Boies and Ted Olson, the opposing lawyers in Bush v. Gore. Fredo blames the Rosado brothers, or maybe Frank Pentangeli. Torture? I didn't authorize torture. I wasn't even at the Justice Department then. I was only White House counsel. The Mancow aftermath. He field tests his belief that waterboarding is not torture. Not only does he admit he was wrong, he passes the message along.
Sean Hannity called me and said, it's still not torture. I said, Sean, he's a friend of mine. It is torture.
How this debate just changed with Rachel Maddow. And Congressman gone wild. First he was talking about Trojan horses, and now it's...
If we provide civil rights protection to somebody based on private sexual behavior, well, the Constitution, the 14th Amendment says we have to provide equal protection.
Equal protection, Congressman, for private sexual behavior? What the... All that and more now on Countdown.
I just want to make sure this is on the record.
Good evening from New York. When a case comes before me involving, let's say, someone who is an immigrant, said the nominee for the Supreme Court, I can't help but think of my own ancestors because it wasn't that long ago when they were in that position. I have to say to myself, and I do say to myself, you know, this could be your grandfather. This could be your grandmother. When I get a case about discrimination, the nominee continued, I have to think about people in my own family who suffered discrimination because of their ethnic background or because of religion or because of gender. And I do take that into account. Our fifth story in the countdown, the smoking gun, the damning confirmation of reverse racism and reverse sexism from Judge Sonia Sotomayor. No, those quotes were from then Supreme Court nominee, conservative Judge Samuel Alito during his confirmation hearing in January 2006. He was answering a question from Republican Senator Coburn. So conservatives predicating their attempted character assassination of Judge Sotomayor on those exact points. You can collect your backsides from the coat check after the show because they've been handed to you. Karl Rove trying a different tack today, that a woman who graduated second in her class at Princeton and then from Yale Law must be dumb under the logic that, quote, I know lots of stupid people who went to Ivy League schools. Ann Coulter. And this from the guy who just told the Chicago Tribune of his former boss, C-minus student at best, President Bush, quote, the myth was that this guy, who was a Yale history grad and a Harvard MBA, was not smart. You don't get to have it both ways. It gets worse. The former Republican governor of Arkansas, Mike Huckabee, saying that Judge Sotomayor's confirmation, quote, would be a direct affront of the basic premise of our judicial system. Judge Maria Sotomayor, he called her. Wow. Way to burnish your credibility, Governor Huckleberry. In a Twitter post, Newt Gingrich calling on Judge Sotomayor to withdraw because she is a Latina woman racist. Quote, white man racist nominee would be forced to withdraw. Latina woman racist should also withdraw. As evidence, the former Republican speaker citing out of context a 2001 speech in which he claims the Supreme Court nominee said that her experience as a Latina woman would make her better than a white man. Judge Sotomayor having said no such thing, the full context of her remarks to the University of California at Berkeley Law School, making clear that what Judge Sotomayor actually said was that a good judge should be fully aware of his or her formative experiences in order to avoid being prejudiced by them. I would hope that a wise Latina woman with the richness of her experiences would more often than not reach a better conclusion than a white male who hasn't lived that life. Each day on the bench, I learn something new about the judicial process and about being a professional Latina woman in a world that sometimes looks at me with suspicion. I am reminded each day that I render decisions that affect people concretely and that I owe them constant and complete vigilance in checking my assumptions, presumptions, and perspectives, and ensuring that to the extent that my limited abilities and capabilities permit me, that I reevaluate them and change as circumstances and cases before me requires. I can and do aspire to be greater than the sum total of my experiences. So she was saying that being who she was might help her rulings or might hinder them. Instead of reading that part of her speech, Senate Republicans choosing to focus on the part where the judge talked about the role Puerto Rican cuisine played in her heritage. The Hill newspaper writing today, this has prompted some Republicans to muse privately about whether Sotomayor is suggesting that distinctive Puerto Rican cuisine such as patitas de cerdo con garbanzo, pig's tongue and ears, would somehow in some small way influence her verdicts from the bench. Speaking of that delicacy, a little bit of what the shrinks call projection from the rapidly declining Limbaugh.
She's an angry woman. She's a bigot. She's a racist. In her own words, she's the antithesis of a judge. She is the antithesis of justice. In her own words, she does not deserve to be on the U.S. Supreme Court.
This guy's just freaking nuts now. Time now to call on our own Eugene Robinson, associate editor and Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist of the Washington Post. Good evening, Gene.
Evening, Keith.
Before they launched this attack on her empathy or took the 2001 quote out of context, did anybody in the GOP bother to check to see if a conservative nominee like, Justice Alito had said exactly the same thing? I mean, Glenn Greenwald at Salon found that on the internet. Presumably even a Newt Gingrich could tap the keyboard with his cloven hoof to find it, couldn't he?
Well, it seems that nobody looked for such a quote. But my suspicion is that they wouldn't have recognized it for what it was if they had come across it. I mean, it's, the point being made by Justice Alito and presumptive Justice Sotomayor was basically the same. They were pointing out an obvious fact. We are the sum total of our experiences. We aspire to be more. We aspire to transcend that. But it is ridiculous to think that, my having grown up in South Carolina, or your having gone to Cornell or whatever, wouldn't affect who we are, and who we are affects how we do our jobs. This is as axiomatic as it could get. Except now it jumps out at some people when it is a Latina saying that, but when a white male says it, it doesn't register. It's, well, of course, of course, those are the standard approved experiences to have, I suppose.
But the way she said it is exactly what you want from a judge. A judge saying, look, this is going to influence in my decision. Does it just influences what I'm going to eat or influences what I'm going to wear today? And I have to check it. She said check it. She wants to be more than that. And that part is left out when they should be standing up and applauding her.
Exactly. They should be standing up and applauding her for a number of the things they're criticizing her for, including, for example, the New Haven firefighter decision, which, as I read it, is actually a portrait of judicial restraint. I didn't think we wanted unelected judges telling the city officials of New Haven what to do, just calling balls and strikes and saying whether or not what they did is permitted by law, and that's what she did in that case. But again, it's not seen that way by her critics, even though that's what it was.
There is another level of farce to this, I think, Gina, and I like your perspective on it. 4 years ago, we were being told that Alberto Gonzales had to be confirmed as Attorney General for Mr. Bush, and if you questioned what were truly, sketchy credentials, you were an anti-Hispanic racist, and some of the same buffoons who are now trying to sell a woman who is right now the victim of racism as the racist in the equation, and who themselves, Limbaugh and Beck and Gingrich, and I'm calling them each a racist right here, they are racists who are now trying to sell themselves as victims of racism. And yet they were exactly in the opposite role with, just as recently as the Alberto Gonzales confirmation hearings, down to the specificity of the ethnicity.
I know it is incredible, Keith. This is not some sort of bizarro world that we suddenly landed in. This is this way. I mean, go all the way back to the Clarence Thomas nomination hearings and how criticizing his credentials and also his record and the whole Anita Hill thing. That was a high-tech lynching and portrayed as racial animus. Whereas this is a woman who has more judicial experience than any nominee for the court in about 100 years, more federal judicial experience. She is enormously qualified in every way, and you know it's just it boggles the mind that contradiction isn't seen by those who are guilty of it.
And by the way, I just saw this out of the corner of my eye. CNN just at this hour ran the 2001 quote and pulled it out of context. So it only reads the first half of the quote. There's no context to it whatsoever. And they're doing the news, and over here we're doing some sort of joke shop. If this were a white male who had graduated second in her class at Princeton, then gone on to Yale Law and spent 11 years on the bench of the Second Circuit, would anybody be questioning her intellect or how she got there?
No, it would be insane to question the intellect of someone, you know, second in your class at Princeton. Come on, this is obviously an enormously bright woman, as you would expect. But I'm predicting confidently that at some point someone is going to say that, well, you know, she's very articulate, even though we have a problem with her. You know, they call her articulate, as if they're shocked that you know, someone who was on Yale Law Journal federal judge can form a complete sentence. But mark my words, it's going to come.
Not to be an advertisement for CNN, but they now have Tom Tancredo on there talking about this, and he has the credibility of a flounder on this subject. The Pulitzer Prize-winning Washington Post columnist Gene Robinson, also of MSNBC, as always, when it's also of MSNBC. Great, thanks, Gene.
Great to be here, Keith.
Periodically, bipartisanship will still fling off the Limbaughs and the Gingriches and the other racists and the phobics and get back on its feet and say, this is too damn important for you children. The two lawyers who fought on opposite sides of the Supreme Court case, Bush v. Gore, joining forces now to fight against California's ban on gay marriage. David Boies, who represented Vice President Gore, and Ted Olson, who represented Governor Bush and would later become his Solicitor General, today announcing their partnership in filing suit in federal court, seeking to have Prop 8 overturned. You will recall that yesterday, the California Supreme Court ruled to uphold the controversial ballot measure that defined marriage as solely between a man and a woman. The court letting stand, however, the unions of 18,000 same-sex couples who had married before the measure had been passed. Boies and Olson arguing that it is not a question of state law, but of federal law. To quote Mr. Olson, it's not about liberal or conservative, Democrat or Republican. We're here in part to symbolize that. This case is about the equality rights guaranteed to every American under the United States Constitution. Let's turn now to Nixon White House counsel John Dean, also, of course, former Associate Deputy Attorney General, now a FindLaw.com columnist and the author of both Worse Than Watergate and Broken Government. John, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
As pathetic as the attacks on Judge Sotomayor might be at the moment, this is heartening stuff here, I would think, to you especially, that these two active partisans saying, you know, no, some things really do transcend partisanship.
It's delightful. It's very pleasant to see two intellectually honest men declare this what it is, which is a civil rights issue. It shows the outreach of the Republican right on particularly the religious right to make this into a wedge issue, notwithstanding the constitutional implications of it. So it's delightful to see these men get together in a common cause.
And the status of these two men within the legal community, what does that imply about the constitutionality of Prop 8 and other ballot initiatives in theory or in practice that might take a specific right away from a specific group?
Well, it speaks very strongly to it that if you honestly analyze what's going on, that indeed there is discrimination, there is a failure to comply with the Equal Protection Clause of certainly the federal Constitution is what they're going to argue here. It certainly applies in many state constitutions as well. So I think that you couldn't have a stronger team to present this issue, and we got to applaud them for bringing the case.
Specifically relating to the presentation and the team, John, there's a statement out tonight from the ACLU and several LGBT legal organizations pleading to others not to file federal lawsuits about this, fearing that it could set back the cause of same-sex marriage because there's a fear that the Supreme Court would not yet be ready to rule in favor of same-sex marriage. Does that explain why we have not seen federal suits prior to this one?
Well, it certainly might explain why the ACLU and these other groups have not filed federal cases in the past, because there is a real danger. There is a risk involved in what Olson and boys are doing. It will affect a lot of lives if indeed it doesn't go well. They're in a circuit that they should prevail in. It's a case that should ultimately go to the Supreme Court. And so it raises the issue of whether the court is ready or not. The ACLU and these other organizations have been going state by state. They've been using state legislatures. They've been using the ballot. They've been gathering information when they litigate, scientific information to refute some of the absurd arguments that are made in these cases of same-sex marriage and their implications. So I think their caution and concern is well-founded. And they're worried that going directly to the Supreme Court at this time, way before the issue might be ready for an institution that is not a cutting-edge institution, might be premature.
Speaking of the cutting-edge qualities to it and what the makeup of this Supreme Court is going to be, is Prop 8 likely to interact with the Sotomayor confirmation process?
I doubt it. She may be asked the question. I think she'd take the traditional position that because it's an issue that's likely to be litigated before the court, she's not going to address it, although it would certainly be thrilling if she would, because I think based on her rulings in general as a circuit court judge and a district court judge, she's very fair. She believes in the equal rights of all, and she might, give some hint, but I think that would be a negative for her if she did.
John Dean, author of Broken Government and Worse Than Watergate, and a longtime friend of our show. Great thanks for that, and great thanks for your time tonight, sir.
Thank you, Keith.
Funny doggone thing about Alberto Gonzales, once considered a potential Bush nominee to that Supreme Court, that he would suddenly reappear during debate over a Hispanic nominee to the Supreme Court and debate over torture. George Bush's principal legal enabler now saying he had nothing to do with the authorization of torture because he was at the White House while that terrible old Justice Department did all the torture memo writing. Will the last Bush appointee fleeing for the hills please turn off the lights?
Hello, I'm a Mac.
PC Choice Chat.
PC Choice Chat?
Yes, a radio show that helps people pick the best PCs for them. Hey, let's go to the phones. Tom from Kalamazoo, you're on the air.
Hey, how you doing? What PC do you recommend for people who hate getting viruses?
Oh, it's a good question.
Crank call. Let's go to Wendy from Fairfield. Hello.
What PC offers great customer support like Mac Geniuses?
No, not doing that one. Let's go to Greg from Dearborn, Michigan. You're on the air.
I'm a longtime PC user. Now I'm thinking about switching to Mac.
I love doing that.
The way it's going, soon only Dick Cheney will even admit that he served in the Bush administration. Fredo, Alberto Gonzales, who ordered the Justice Department memos that rationalized torture, actually says he had nothing to do with authorizing torture because he didn't work at the Justice Department then. Genius, I tell you. Later, Rachel joins us. One torture denier changes tune after bitter personal experience. Does that change the broader debate? And what to do with the detainees at Gitmo? What else, says a guy on Fix News? Kill them. Worst persons ahead on Countdown.
Your health is your true wealth. Make a smart investment in your health with a VitaPack program only from GNC. Our customized VitaPack regimens give you essential vitamins and supplements with ingredients that support heart health, promote strong bones, and power up energy levels. Stop by GNC and find the VitaPack regimen that's right for you with the help of one of our in-store experts. It's a small investment with a huge healthy return. GNC VitaPack programs. Invest well. Live well. Today and into the future.
Want your long way to give you more? Well, get on out of that department store and into CoverGirl Outlast. No department store long way gives you so many different ways to last through breakfast, lunch, and dinner. More choices, more shades, more Outlast.
National Car Rental knows I'm picky. So at National, I go right past the counter, and you get to choose any car in the aisle. Choose any car! You cannot be serious!
Seriously, you choose.
Whether you're into a good game or a good song, life is good at Handmaker. Assisted living at Handmaker means you can be as active as you want to be. For a tour, call 322-7035. That's 322-7035.
We're about to surprise someone with free Hungry Howie's pizza for a year. Pizza made with fresh dough, only the Hungry Howie's way. The excitement is mounting thinking of all that free, delicious pizza with 8 mouth-watering, flavorful crust that you can only get at Hungry Howie's.
You just won free pizza for a year. Wow! Wow! Wow!
I love Hungry Howie's!
Well, we didn't expect that. But hey, it's Hungry Howie's. Screamingly delicious pizza.
Hi, I'm Max Older with Fair Exchange Suzuki of Phoenix. Introducing a new line of Suzuki, the Grand Vitara, the Forenza, the Ariel. 7-year, 100,000-mile warranty. Power windows, locks from 35 miles to the gallon. Plus 0% interest or $199 a month or $500 gas card. You owe it to yourself before you buy a Honda, a Nissan, or Toyota. Compare the price, the value of the new Suzukis. Remember, we have a grand selection of trucks, cars, and SUVs. For fun, for adventure, Suzuki, the way of life.
Or Rachel unravels the party's high court dilemma. The Rachel Maddow Show, next only on MSNBC.
The nation's former top lawman, Alberto Gonzales, has been asked whether he's afraid he could be in legal jeopardy right now. He would not answer, but in our fourth story tonight, as if he does fear he is in legal jeopardy, Mr. Gonzales tried to blame the Justice Department for authorizing torture, not when he was in charge of that Justice Department. No. Before that, Gonzales was asked whether he was involved in any of the DOJ legal advice authorizing torture while he was still White House counsel. Quote, "What I can say is that I worked with the Department of Justice ensuring that legal advice was provided. But at the end of the day, it's the responsibility of the Department of Justice to provide the legal guides on behalf of the executive branch." But at the beginning of the day, it was the executive branch, him specifically, who told the DOJ to authorize the torture. On January 22nd, 2002, Assistant Attorney General Jay Bybee wrote a memo declaring the Geneva Convention null and void. This was not Bybee's idea. The memo was addressed to White House counsel Alberto Gonzales, and it begins, quote, "You have asked for our office's views concerning the effect of international treaties and federal laws on the treatment of individuals detained by the U.S. 3 days later, Mr. Gonzales agreed with that memo in a memo of his own to the president. And the notorious so-called first Bybee memo of August of that year, defining torture down, was also addressed to White House counsel Alberto Gonzales. It begins, quote, "You have asked for our office's views regarding the standards of conduct under the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, and Degrading Treatment or Punishment." That seminal memo redefining torture was prepared less than a week after Bybee consulted on the issue with Alberto Gonzales. According to Condoleezza Rice, the DOJ's legal advice, quote, was being coordinated by the counsel to the president, Alberto Gonzales. And when the CIA tortured Abu Zubaydah even before the DOJ authorized it, according to a report from NPR last week, the CIA got its permission directly from the White House, each time in almost daily emails from Alberto Gonzales. Let's turn now to Chris Hayes, Washington editor for The Nation magazine. Chris, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you, Keith.
What does it say when the question is whether he fears he is in legal jeopardy and the top-notch burnished legal mind of Alberto Gonzales chooses not to deny it?
Well, I thought it was interesting that he didn't go out of his way to deny it. And I think it shows that, I mean, one of the things that's satisfying in some respect about the interview with Gonzales is it shows there is some wariness there. There is some conception that they aren't just going to kind of get off scot-free. Now, whether that means they're going to be dragged before Congress or there's going to be some sort of independent body that's commissioned, I think what you're seeing from Gonzales, it's the first time you've seen kind of this crack in the wall solidarity that has come out of the former Bush officials associated with the policy.
Well, how far do you think that crack goes? Because as these various congressional probes go on and more documents are released, how much of a chance is there that Gonzales actually does, in the more colloquial use of the term, crack? I mean, does he start throwing out blame against David Addington, Cheney's counsel, or Cheney himself in an effort to save himself?
Well, you wonder. I mean, one of the reasons that I think some kind of sustained inquiry is necessary is precisely because as long as there isn't one, we won't know what the principals know. And it's totally possible that under those conditions and under oath, and when people make their own computations of their self-interest and they think, I don't necessarily I don't want to be the one to sort of be in the ditch for this policy that I was kind of implementing but wasn't directing, that you might get to see people turn on each other and we might have a fuller airing of just exactly what went on. That really is the key thing.
Plus, if the Godfather is in fact some sort of biblical-like containment of prophecy regarding the Bush administration. It has to be Fredo. So anyway, back to reality. Describe and explain, if you would, the difference in the tone here between Mr. Gonzalez and Mr. Cheney on the subject of defending torture.
Well, that's fascinating to me. I mean, the difference is the difference between Cheney, who is clearly one of the architects, if not the principal architect of the policy, and Gonzalez, who was essentially a henchman, a lackey, someone who was doing what was directed by the Office of the Vice President and by David Addington, largely. I mean, if you believe the accounts most of the accounts that have come out about the kind of interplay and bureaucratic infighting in the office, that's the nature of it. And what you see is that he's not, unlike Cheney, who is completely unbowed, completely unapologetic. Gonzalez seems far less willing to sort of brag about the role that he played in this whole thing. And I think that is at least some small silver lining that the policies that were implemented during that period haven't been so thoroughly normalized that he thinks that's the kind of thing that he could kind of leap to claim credit for.
But on the other hand, with him saying that these were the DOJ's responsibility, these opinions, to what extent is he sort of waving a red flag to the former DOJ lawyers, or even to John Ashcroft, who was the Attorney General who preceded him in that post, essentially daring them to reveal the true role of Alberto Gonzalez in those opinions, kind of like the way we laid it out at the start of the segment here?
Right. I don't know how much thought he's given it. I think he's trying to throw it back less on Ashcroft and more on Bybee and John Yoo, who were the two people who were, I mean, it was Yoo who was basically writing the memos and Bybee putting his name on it. He's trying to throw it back in their direction, and they're the people that everybody has kind of associated with the policies because Bybee's name is on the memo and because Yoo has been so outspoken in both internal and accounts and since the administration ended. So I think he's just trying to direct people back in the direction of blame on these two names that have been floating around in press accounts.
But if every memo begins with you and it's YOU, not YOO, have asked for our office's views, that boomerang is going to hit Mr. Gonzalez and not Mr. Bybee, one would think. In any event.
No, it's clear that it was emanating from the White House.
Chris Hayes of The Nation. Thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Keith.
Remember the story yesterday about the guy in China stuck in the traffic jam because a man was threatening to jump off the bridge? Here's video of how the man decided to resolve the dilemma his own self. And the Sotomayor hits just keep on coming. The crap coming down so heavily that you feel like you need a hat. But one guy has the dumbest reason to oppose this judge's nomination, and he is tonight's worst person. Ahead.
Countdown with Keith Olbermann is brought to you by Mercedes-Benz on the web at MBUSA.com.
It's been an industry leader for generations. Born of a rich performance heritage, equipped with breakthrough safety features, and wrapped in a classic, timeless look. We believe great cars take a vision not everyone shares. Hurry into the spring event by Mercedes-Benz for exceptional offers on the 2009 E-Class and other models, going on right now at your authorized Mercedes-Benz dealer.
Until we can move a ton of goods using no fuel, we've got the next best thing. CSX trains can move a ton of goods 436 miles on 1 gallon of fuel. CSX, how tomorrow moves.
Has progress taken us to a better place? I'd say it's taken us for a ride. Honestly, what thanks do we owe progress? We're up to our necks in landfill and down to the wire in resources, and climate change is out to get us. That's why progress plays no role inside post-shredded wheat. Here, we put the no in innovation. Post-original shredded wheat is still just the one simple, honest ingredient which naturally comes with vitamins, minerals, and fiber. All we did was make it spoon size. Did we go too far?
Last year, more than 500,000 investors opened an account at TD Ameritrade. Maybe because TD Ameritrade's fair and straightforward pricing made sense to them. Maybe for the range of products, not just stocks, but bonds, mutual funds, CDs, and the clear, objective guidance to help them choose. Or maybe because the people on the phone or in the branch just seemed like good people to work with. Knowledgeable and nice. So why not talk to TD Ameritrade? There's never been a better time for a second.
Your swing looks way off. It is. Ever since that fender bender, my back and neck just haven't been right.
You're still hurting? That could be the sign of a serious injury. You should go to First Chiropractic.
First Chiropractic?
Yeah, that's where I went when I got hurt at work. The doctors there are great. They completely healed my back, and my insurance covered it all.
Wow, thanks. I'm going to give him a call.
First Chiropractic, good health is to enjoy.
Problems with the mouse? We'll come to your house. Call Rent-A-Techie at 790-0279. Computer caught a virus? You really ought to hire us. Call Rent-A-Techie at 790-0279. New software won't run? Consider it done. Call Rent-A-Techie at 790-0279. We come to your home or office and make your computer work. Call Rent-A-Techie at 790-0279.
On your TV, only $8.99 a month.
Tomorrow,
We got a great idea.
get your mojo working.
That was very impressive.
Morning Joe.
The happiest place on earth.
Tomorrow at 6 on MSNBC. Chris exposes the political risks facing the president in California's gay rights battle. Hardball with Chris Matthews. Tomorrow at 7 on MSNBC. MSNBC, the place for politics.
Bests in a moment, and what Elvis got from Dr. Nick is now available without a prescription. Hi, everybody. First on this date in 1911 was born the legendary actor Vincent Price. Well, he's almost exclusively remembered now for horror roles. He basically played every lead character ever dreamt up by Edgar Allan Poe. Price was also outstanding as a southern gigolo in the film noir classic Laura. And you ain't seen comedy till you've seen him in an otherwise horrible 1950 picture called Champagne for Caesar. In that one, Price plays a soap executive who periodically lapses into trances of creative genius. Let's play oddball. Speaking of creative genius, back in Guangzhou, China, where last night we told you the story of the suicidal man Chen Fu-Chao, who was threatening to jump off this here bridge, and the senior citizen who decided to help him. Today, in case you thought we were kidding, we have the video. This is retired soldier Lian Jiansheng, frustrated with the 5-hour-long ordeal, skirting past security, shimming up the bridge, and appearing to befriend Fu-Chao. Jiansheng then asks to shake the man's hand, and then pushes him overboard. And air cushion. Fu-Chao's wrist and back were dinged up, but he's not otherwise injured. Both men were taken downtown and arrested, where Lian Jiansheng quoted Danny Glover from Lethal Weapon, telling police, "I'm getting too old for this." Right. To Jacksonville in Florida, where after torrential rain, the owners of Clark's Fish Camp found some flood damage in the restaurant and an alligator hiding behind the commode in the men's room, and with a wide stance. Anyway, it was a young gator, pretty easily wrangled and dragged out by its tail, released back into a pond. Hey, all employees and alligators must wash their hands. Read the sign, pal. Finally to Prague in the Czech Republic, where angry youths chucked hundreds of eggs at politician Yuri Parubek, who is chairman of the Social Democrat Party. Wait, Social Democrats? Well, why didn't you say so? Get him! The rally was held in advance of next week's European parliamentary elections. According to the Agence France-Presse, Parubek fell out of favor with young Czechs when, as the country's prime minister, he backed police for breaking up a youth's techno party in 2005. Well, why didn't you say so? To their credit, Parubek and his crew stayed there and took the incoming eggs until the crowd ran out. And then after the speech, they wrung out their shirts and they made omelets. We've seen the waterboarding. We've heard the honorable admission from the man that he was wrong. Will radio's man cow actually now impact the debate over torture? Rachel joins us. And this is not Congressman John Culberson of Texas, but it sounds like him in tonight's WTF moment. These stories ahead, but first time countdown, top 3 best persons in the world. Number 3, best underinformed authorities. Security at an unidentified American airport. This is from the British medical journal Annals of Oncology. When the man flew from France to U.S. shores, he was checked in at customs. ID, passport, fingerprints. What do you mean, no fingerprints? The passenger had been on a drug called capecitabine, a follow-up treatment for chemotherapy for neck cancer. It can cause your fingerprints to disappear. Security did not know that. They detained the man for hours. That must have been some phone call to the head office. No, sir, he has no fingerprints. No, sir, I have not been drinking. Number 2, best 911 abuser, Rabin Osman of Hillsboro, Oregon. He called 911 after a visit to McDonald's because the guy at the drive-thru would not give his little brother his juice box. Mr. Osman's father, blaming all this on an insufficient command of English, said also, "You need help from the police, you have to call the 911. I don't have any other number." But our winner best memorabilia items, Julian's of Los Angeles, it will be auctioning off mementos of the lives of Marilyn Monroe and Elvis Presley. In Monroe's case, autographed photos, clothing, and her coffee table. In Elvis's, jewelry, books, and prescription bottles from the personal collection of his physician, Dr. Nick. Of course, the prescription bottles are only worth about $1 a piece because there are 4 million of them. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Elvis has left the building.
Now, you're watching Countdown with Keith Olbermann. Coming up next on The Rachel Maddow Show. For Republicans, is trouble spelled Sotomayor? Rachel unravels the party's high court dilemma. The Rachel Maddow Show. Next, only on MSNBC. Brought to you by Sprint, only on the Now Network.
Welcome to the Now Network. Population 49 million. Right now, 1.5 million people are on a conference call. 750,000 wish they weren't. Construction workers are making 244,000 Nextel Direct Connect calls. 1 million people are responding to an email. 151 accidentally hit Reply All. That's happening now. America's most dependable 3G network, bringing you the first wireless 4G network. Sprint, the Now Network.
What are you waiting for? All around the world, men with erectile dysfunction have asked their doctors about Cialis. Ask your doctor if a Cialis option is right for you. Because in addition to 36-hour Cialis, there's another dosing option. Cialis for daily use, a low-dose tablet you take every day, so you can be ready anytime the moment is right.
Tell your doctor about your medical condition and all medications, and ask if you're healthy enough for sexual activity. Don't take Cialis if you take nitrates for chest pain, as this may cause an unsafe drop in blood pressure. Don't drink alcohol in excess with Cialis. Side effects may include headache, upset stomach, delayed backache, or muscle ache. To avoid long-term injury, seek immediate medical help for an erection lasting more than 4 hours. If you have any sudden decrease or loss in hearing or vision, stop taking Cialis and call your doctor right away.
36-hour Cialis or Cialis for daily use. So when the moment is right, you can be ready.
When the light comes on, just come in. Pep Boys.
Pep Boys is America's only tires, parts, and full-service center. This week, Manny, Mo, and Jack bring you the Pep Boys Memorial Day tire event. Buy one tire for as low as $24.99. Buy any 2 tires, get a free oil change. Buy any 3 tires and get the 4th tire free. When the light comes on, just come in.
Pep Boys does everything for less.
Need a tow? Call 1-800-PEP-BOYS.
Your lawn, threatened by 2 types of weeds. Traditional lawn weed killers control either lawn weeds or crabgrass, but not both. Why do half the job when Bayer Advanced All-in-One Lawn Weed and Crabgrass Killer does it all? Backed by Bayer's proven science, it's the ready-to-spray product that kills lawn weeds plus crabgrass without harming your lawn. Just hook to your hose and go. Nothing's faster or easier. And now, it's rainproof in 1 hour. Bayer Advanced. Better science, better results.
It was Senator Pat Moynihan's observation that each is entitled to his own interpretations but not his own facts. Happens anyway, obviously. But what happens when those facts and those interpretations suddenly align? Our third story in the countdown, when a man who denied that waterboarding is torture suddenly changes his mind, does it change the debate? Rachel Maddow joins me in a moment. The man who had that genuine first-hand experience, WLS radio host Eric Mancow-Muller. A refresher.
We're going to do it on 5, okay? Okay. 1, 2, I lied. Ooh, water going.
All right, that's it. That's it. All right. Oh, God. Mancow is soaked. Would you consider that torture? Look, all that's been done to this country, and I heard about water being dropped on someone's face, and I never considered torture. Even when I was laying there, I thought this is going to be no big deal. I go swimming. It's going to be like being in the tub. It is such an odd feeling to have water poured down your nose and your mouth with your head back. It was instantaneous. I thought I could hold out 30 seconds, 60 seconds. It was instantaneous, and I don't want to say this. I do not want to say this. Absolutely torture. You do? Absolutely. I mean, that's drowning.
But on this program last night, Mr. Mueller expanded on that, saying that the experience was far worse than drowning, quoting him, "Your brain is shut off." And later, "I would have said anything to make it stop." And he reiterated without equivocation the central point, that waterboarding is torture, that he was telling even those who did not wish to hear it.
First of all, Sean Hannity called me and said, it's still not torture. I said, Sean, he's a friend of mine. It is torture.
Let's turn now to a friend of mine, Rachel Maddow, the host of the Rachel Maddow Show. Good evening.
Hi, Keith. Nice to see you.
A simple admission, but a profound one from Mancow, given that the firsthand experience changed his mind. Does it change anything in the bigger picture?
I think it does change things to the extent that the debate is honest. And to the extent that the debate isn't honest, it won't have an effect on it. From the very beginning, this has been a debate that involved a lot of fake expertise. I mean, from the very beginning, going all the way back to the Pentagon and the Vice President's office deciding that they had a better idea about what they wanted to be international intelligence than what the intelligence community was telling them, with the CIA hiring contractors who had no interrogation expertise because they knew better than experienced professional interrogators like those at the FBI how to actually get information out of people, and then carrying on into the national debate about torture that started 5 years ago now, with all of these people involved in the debate having no firsthand experience, no professional experience, no direct experience of these things, but yet being willing to substitute their own judgment for those who would actually know the answers to these moral, important, world-changing questions. And now Mr. Mancow does have firsthand experience of this. That should factor into the debate. If the debate's honest, it will.
And maybe the best answer on this is the I don't know answer, because when I asked him if he thought now that he could trust an answer given by somebody who'd been waterboarded, he said, I don't know the answer to that. And obviously that's the point, but how do you get that point across to others who were or are where he was? I mean, you can't waterboard everybody who believes waterboarding isn't torture. It totally defeats the purpose of opposing waterboarding. And you can't waterboard even the opinion makers who reinforce that idea. The Associated Press just moved a story about this whole thing with Mancow and with me and what he did. Is that enough, or how does this thing get advanced to the point where people just question their own presumptions?
Well, on the issue about whether or not you can believe anything that anybody says under waterboarding, ultimately I think the debate will have fully matured when we stop debating that point altogether. I mean, what if you can get great answers out of people from waterboarding? What if you can get great answers out of people from dangling them out of helicopters over the open sea? What if you can get great answers out of people from raping them or killing their children in front of them? I mean, honestly, where do you stop? The point about torture is that it doesn't matter if it's effective. We don't do it. And the whole debate about effectiveness, I think, denies the idea that torture is beyond the pale. The reason that there are statutes against torture is not because people never thought it was effective before and were doing it otherwise. Everybody who's ever tortured did it because they thought it was effective, whether to discover whether or not somebody was a witch, or whether to discover the end of the plot on 24, or whether it was to discover whatever Dick Cheney wanted to discover in Guantanamo and Abu Ghraib. But the point of effectiveness ultimately will be left behind, I think, when the debate returns to its rational foundations.
Is that ever going to happen, though? Because first off, we have 2 or 3 generations raised on Rambo movies and torture scenarios, and also we have to, I think, acknowledge this. There's going to be a segment of every population in every country in the history of the world to this point, and presumably going forward, this will continue, at least in some measure, people who just don't really get the moral argument and think that as long as it isn't happening to them, it's okay. Isn't the most impactful argument being the one that this doesn't do anybody any good? It doesn't even achieve what your purpose is, even if you don't have any morals?
I don't think so.
No?
I think ultimately the United States ends up taking a role in moral leadership on this issue once again, and decides that the moral argument is the right argument, and decides that the reason there are statutes against torture, again, is not because of effectiveness, but because it's just plain wrong. I mean, there's a reason that politicians no longer get away with the assertion that something is legal because the president says it's legal. There's a reason that American politicians are laughed at, even by the general public, when they say that now. And that's because of the way that Watergate ended. Because of the fact that the only reason Richard Nixon was able to avoid impeachment is because he resigned, and the only reason he was able to avoid conviction is because he was pardoned. There needs to be accountability on this so that we do win the moral argument, and that's where it's settled. That's why accountability is so important on this issue.
Yeah, but you know that only happened because Woodward and Bernstein tortured all Deep Throat. You know that, right? Rachel Maddow, the host of the Rachel Maddow Show. And they say I never have anybody on the show who I disagree with. Rachel and I just disagreed on this central point about torture.
Ta-da!
Ta-da! All right, thanks, Rach.
Thanks, Keith.
When next you see her is the GOP committing suicide, going after Sotomayor in this way. Her special guest will be Mark McKinnon, former Bush media advisor. That's on the Rachel Maddow Show at the top of the hour. Also, he's a Republican congressman from Texas, and he's now invoked A, the Trojan horse, B, private sexual behavior, and C, federally provided protection. Tonight's WTF moment. And in the spasm of embarrassing arguments against Judge Sotomayor, this is the worst. Her name is too difficult to pronounce. She should change the pronunciation of her name. Worst person's ahead on Countdown.
It's time to celebrate the world we share. Time to enjoy the journey and the destination. It's time to laugh and scream and get goosebumps. Become part of the story and discover a place where worlds connect. Busch Gardens.
Slow down and grill with KC Masterpiece barbecue sauces and marinades.
We now offer phone service for $1.70 a month with Magic Jack. That's just $19.95 a year. $19.95 a year. We give you free local and long distance and your own phone number. Replace your phone company or add a second line with Magic Jack.
This allergy season, get relief for nasal symptoms and your wallet with Astapro, a prescription antihistamine spray that goes right to the site of nasal allergy symptoms to relieve sneezing, itchy runny nose, and congestion. Go to Astapro.com to learn about a valuable discount card.
If you're allergic to Astapro, Astelin, or Azolastine, don't use it. Also avoid alcohol, sedatives, operating machinery, and driving. Side effects may include unusual taste, nosebleeds, headache, fatigue, and sleepiness.
Ask your doctor about Astapro.
With great deals on hotels near you, Travelocity can turn any car into a getaway car.
Checking in, please.
Plan your getaway now for as little as $59 a night. Travelocity. You'll never roam alone.
The Republican congressman who thought his visit to C-SPAN was just another drowsy day with the policy wonks until his own words went horribly, horribly wrong. It's tonight's WTF moment. First, the worst. The solution from Fox to relocating Gitmo detainees? Kill them. And the arguments against Judge Sotomayor? She once quoted a socialist, and her name is too difficult for Republicans to pronounce. You're watching Countdown on MSNBC. Didn't make it up.
Performance now is all about logic. That some cars cost as much as $1,500 to maintain is one thing. That others cost even more is quite another. That a BMW costs you nothing to maintain defies all logic whatsoever. And in turn, makes it the most logical choice of all. Performance now is the 3 Series. Visit your local BMW center today for a test drive.
Looking to save money on the products you need and use the most? There's one path to follow. The one that leads to your neighborhood Walgreens, where you'll find our affordable essentials, the products you use most, now for less every day.
Millions of men 45 and older just don't feel like they used to. Are you one of them? Remember when you had more energy for 18 holes with your buddies? More passion for the one you love? More fun with your family and friends? Could be an easily treatable condition called low T.
Come on, stop living in the shadows. You've got a life to live.
So don't blame it on aging. Go to isitlowt.com to find out more.
What the congressman meant to say was something that did not include the use of the phrase private sexual behavior and protection in the same sentence. Tonight's WTF moment. That's next, but first time for Countdown's number 2 story. Tonight's worst persons in the world, the bronze, to Colonel Ralph Peters, retired and crazy from Fix News, offering Neil Cavuto a solution to the problem of relocating detainees at Gitmo, possible future detainees, too. Once you commit an act of terror in my book, you're outside. You're anathema. You should be killed. We're dealing with people who aren't human anymore. They're monsters. Just like in the movies, monsters deserve to die. And we agonize over this. There will be miscarriages of justice in a brutal war like this, but I don't think too many. We're pretty good at figuring out who's right and who's wrong. Actually, we're not. But that's almost besides the point. Colonel Peters, you do realize that if some authority in this country or another country just decided that you were a terrorist without proof or trial or even like a warrant, you do realize that according to your solution, they would be right simply to kill you. Our runners-up, Bill Hemmer and Fix News, during one of the Comedy Channel's 913 segments, hysterically branding Judge Sotomayor a racist, socialist, strange, food-eating, argumentative, empathetic, hot-tempered woman. They threw up a graphic that noted in her yearbook at Princeton she quoted that evil socialist, the candidate for president in the 30s and 40s, Norman Thomas. Never referred to it, never mentioned the quote. The quote was, "I am not a champion of lost causes, but of causes not yet won." Yeah, wow, almost Karl Marx. Must be code for I love me some Che Guevara. Idiots. And our winner, a Mark Krikorian of a Center for Immigration Studies, writing at the National Review Online that it is unfair to the rest of us to have to pronounce Sotomayor's name correctly. Deferring to people's own pronunciation of their names should obviously be our first inclination, but there ought to be limits. Putting the emphasis on the final syllable of Sotomayor is unnatural in English. There are basically two options. The newcomer adapts to us, or we adapt to him. I don't know when your ancestors arrived in this country, Mr. Krikorian, but there was a time in which immigrants with tough-to-pronounce names were encouraged to change them, or sometimes had them changed for them at Ellis Island and elsewhere. Unless Sitting Bull is one of your ancestors, they either got here afterwards, Mr. Krikorian, or like mine, they resisted this racist, wallpapering pap that you are now spouting. If they hadn't, today, your name, by your own logic, would be Mark Crick. Mark, when it's my name, it's my right. When it's Sotomayor's name, she should change it. Krikorian, today's worst person in the world.
Why do new investors love Scottrade?
I'm not a major player in the market, but they treat me like one. See for yourself at scotttrade.com.
Copy that. Prescription drug prices. Everyone's talking about them.
But now we can actually do something about them.
At Walmart, their prices are unbeatable.
Over 300 prescriptions are just $4.
$4. Imagine that.
Save money. Live better. Walmart.
When I was told I had diabetes, I felt amazingly boxed in.
Joe uses the Contour meter from Bayer.
My meter absolutely adapts to me and my lifestyle. I'm Joe James. Being outside of the box is my simple win.
Now available in 5 vibrant colors.
Do you have what it takes to be a citizen of our nation? And will you solemnly swear to start every day by asking, why not? Declare your independence. Become a citizen of our nation. Royal Caribbean, the nation of why not?
It seems like prices just keep getting higher. But at Vonage, we've always charged only $24.99 a month for unlimited local and long-distance calling. So even though the cable and phone companies have been busy raising their rates year after year, we've been charging the same $24.99. And there's never been a better time to sign up because we're waiving all setup and equipment fees. So call 1-877-4VONAGE today and hear how good $24.99 can sound.
Why do Scottrade customers love their local branches?
Whenever I call Scottrade, a real person answers right away. Imagine, a real person.
We thought you'd like that.
Okay, so the Ford F-150 is the only truck with those new steps on the tailgate and the side of the box, making it easier to get to the cargo. And you're thinking, nah, I don't need those. Oh, yeah? Let's do the math. How many times are you going to be in and out of the cargo box? Once? Twice? No. I'm thinking 50, maybe 60,000 times, especially since it's got the most payload. You see what I'm getting at? Hey, unless all you're carrying is yarn, it seems like a no-brainer to me, okay? It's not just a pickup truck. It's a Ford F-150.
Summer has always belonged to children. But now that the Summer of Audi event is here, summer can finally be yours. Experience the Summer of Audi with no payments at signing when you lease or finance select Audi models and get over 130 channels of Sirius satellite radio.
Expert, the Orkin Man. For Republicans, is trouble spelled Sotomayor? Rachel unravels the party's high court dilemma. The Rachel Maddow Show, next only on MSNBC.
Finally tonight, some congressmen are born incoherent, some achieve incoherence, and some have incoherence thrust upon them. Our number one story, as promised, our WTF moment. If on the subject of your opposition to same-sex marriage you come across as less generous than David Brooks, less nuanced than Pat Buchanan, and less informed than Carrie Prejean, you may still get yourself elected to Congress and re-elected and re-elected 5 times, in fact. But when you were asked about this opposition to same-sex marriage, if your answer makes David Brooks and Pat Buchanan and Carrie Prejean all say, WTF, you, sir, have transcended the born, achieved, thrust upon them equation and moved directly to all of the above. Meet Congressman John Culberson of the 7th District of Texas. We have heard him before say goofy stuff, but nothing that would make him a first-teamer. He is the guy who announced that the stimulus package was, quote, a Trojan horse that liberals are using to ultimately turn America into France. But that's nothing like the work of the true all-stars, Steve King of Iowa, or Mr. Shimkus of Illinois, the one who occasionally has ecstatic religious visions in the middle of his hearings, or, of course, legendary team captain Michelle Bachmann. But now, Mr. Culberson has elevated his game. He went on C-SPAN, which always seems like a good idea until you find yourself in the terminal stages of an answer so labyrinthine, so filled with double entendres that you cannot remember a time when you were not on C-SPAN, lost in your own sentences. Mr. Culberson was asked a pretty straightforward question. One assumes he thought he was giving a pretty straightforward answer.
You said a lot about how the federal government shouldn't be in our house. My question is about gay marriage. So do you really think the federal government should be in our house or the government shouldn't? Because as I know, gay marriage is the state government that controls that. So what do you think on that?
Well, under the 10th Amendment, the states have a first responsibility for providing for public safety, public health, public morality, all issues that just affect the people within that state. It's up to the states. And you either follow the Constitution or you don't.
Okay, we haven't gotten to the crazy yet. I just wanted to interject that the 10th Amendment reads as follows. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. That's it. That's the whole can of cheese whiz. Doesn't say a damn thing in there, Mr. Culberson, that the states have a first responsibility for morality and public. Maybe he was thinking of that when he went off like this.
Now, personally, I think that, and it's just, I think, also self-evident that you've got to have a marriage between a man and a woman, or society's not going to make it. I mean, you're not going to have a fruitful, productive, growing civilization unless marriage is between a man and a woman. I mean, that's just history. History will show you that. But it is a person's private business. Their private life is their private business. I'm fundamentally a libertarian at heart, and I do believe in the 10th Amendment. I don't want to hear about somebody's private behavior.
And I don't want to hear you keep referencing parts of the 10th Amendment that you and only you can see.
Now think about this. You cannot, if we provide civil rights protection to somebody based on private sexual behavior, well, the Constitution, the 14th Amendment says we have to provide equal protection.
Congressman, hello. You're talking about private sexual behavior and providing protection. Hello.
Federal law cannot permit. If one state, Vermont, wants to do that, you can't let that cross state lines. You've got to let, frankly, a lot of these issues have to be up to the states, but the federal government cannot permit, for example, the federal government has a legitimate role in interstate commerce.
Interstate commerce? Where the hell did interstate commerce come from, Congressman? Oh, yeah, we have to ship all that protection for the private sexual behavior.
And that's where the federal government's role comes in. And I think the federal government shouldn't recognize it. It's just a bad idea. And But fundamentally, the right of privacy is fundamental.
Well, there you have it. Fundamentally, the right of privacy is fundamental. Congressman Culberson sounds at all familiar to you. I suspect this is why.
Hell, I was born here, and I was raised here, and dadgummit, I'm going to die here. And no side-winding, bushwhacking, hornswoggling, crocker is going to roll my pussy cutter.
Now, who can argue with that?
Congressman John Culberson, 7th District of Texas, where the answer to every question is either the 10th Amendment or fundamentally the right of privacy is fundamental or the government has to provide protection for private sexual behavior. Possibly to harken back to the congressman's remark about the stimulus plan, possibly protection involving the Trojan horse. WTF. That's countdown for this, the 2,218th day since the previous president declared mission accomplished in Iraq. I'm Keith Olbermann. Good night and good luck. Now...